Parenthood is challenging, and so is navigating regular childhood illnesses. But if your child is diagnosed with a chronic illness, that takes it to another level.
I have a little saying that I try to ground into of let your faith be bigger than your fear. Try to ride those waves as much as you can because hopefully it'll smooth out soon.
That's Zach's mother, a licensed clinical social worker, Janet Hasson. I'm Monica Fox, Senior Director of Outreach and Government Relations for the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois, and your host for this edition of The Journey Continues. Janet joins us for this episode of The Journey Continues to share how she's helping her son navigate the challenges of living with a chronic illness. Hi, Janet. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So let's get right into it. When you were pregnant with Zach, was there any evidence of medical issues with him?
No, he's my second, and he was a much easier pregnancy than my first. So everything was healthy. Everything was great when he was born. No issues.
And so when did his kidney journey begin?
It began about a month and a half before he turned 5. So he was 4. Once again, I have an older one who was sick more often. He was my healthy kid, never had issues with him. And he just had like a winter cold around this time of year. And afterwards, he just started having some swelling around the eyes. And we didn't think anything of it. We took him to the doctor. They said it was just kind of some residual congestion, said it would go away. And then we kind of assumed it would go away, and it kind of kept going. His preschool teachers were mentioning that they noticed it more because I think sometimes as a parent, when you see your child every day, you can kind of acclimate to like how you don't see like changes as much. So I was grateful that they kind of brought my attention to it as well and said, like, we really do notice this has been hanging on for a while. So we went back. At that point, I decided to go to a specialist. So I thought the ENT was the specialist that would deal with what I was seeing. So I went to the ear, nose, and throat doctor. They said he had a sinus infection and prescribed antibiotics. So we did a 10-day course of antibiotics. And after the 10 days, it wasn't getting any better. And one morning he woke up and his eyes were almost swollen shut. And around that time, I also noticed he did feel a little bit heavier, which I thought was kind of weird that he said that his pants weren't fitting so well. So I took him to the ENT that morning where his eyes were just like almost swollen shut. And he's like, I think it's an allergic reaction. That's all it is. And I went back home and I really was kind of getting nervous. Like that didn't sit well with me. So then I just kind of went on to Google WebMD, just putting in like swollen eyes, swollen body. And this one thing came up that I couldn't even pronounce at the time. So I just went back to his pediatrician and I was like, look, I don't know what's going on, but I really need you to take another look at him. And that's when we finally got the diagnosis.
And so what treatments has he experienced so far since his diagnosis?
Initially, he was on high-dose prednisone, so high-dose steroids, which not very fun for kids, and enalapril for his blood pressure. And as he wasn't responding as well, he ended up adding some more medication. So he's actually on the medications that I think people take post-transplant. So tacrolimus, mycophenolate. Basically, since he turned 5, he has been on a combination of mycophenolate, tacrolimus, enalapril. With his disease, you go into relapse and remission. So relapse means you're spilling protein. Remission means you're not spilling protein. So when he relapses and he starts spilling protein, he has to go back on the high-dose steroids. So then he's kind of on a combination of everything.
What are the challenges with those current treatments that he's taking?
The biggest challenges are the immunosuppression. I think little kids typically get sick frequently regardless, but when you have a child who's immunosuppressed, I hate to say it was on steroids because extra, you know. So especially for a very long time, he got sick very frequently. Right before COVID, he actually got a pneumonia that he was not able to get over easily. We had to get an infectious disease doctor involved and work with his nephrologist to reduce some of the immunosuppression. And it took about 3 months to get him over it. So that's a huge challenge, just worrying about his health separate from the kidney disease.
That's super challenging, especially like you said, when kids generally catch a lot of, regular colds and things like that, but that's so much more difficult for him to get over.
And trying to keep a child to remember to wash your hands and don't be all over your friends and don't share, you know, items like that's adults I think are better about remembering. Little ones it's harder.
It's hard for adults too, but I can
Yeah.
imagine it's so much harder for a child and you as a mother trying to help him, navigate all of that. How'd you navigate through COVID?
I won't say I navigated it very well. It was definitely a learning experience, and thankfully, he's given me a lot of grace for how I navigated it. I think the timing of it, especially with just having gotten over the pneumonia, he was actually supposed to go back to school finally in March of 2020. And that's really when everything shut down. So, having just gotten over the pneumonia and having had a really hard time with that, and then COVID hitting, really was not great for my anxiety as far as, feeling comfortable having him be out. He was in middle school when COVID started. So he was homeschooled through all of middle school. We did keep him a little bit more sheltered. And once he went back to high school is kind of when we did kind of let go a little bit and just say, you know what, you have to live your life. We've done everything we can do and we know a little bit more now and we're just going to hope for the best. But you do have to have a sense of normalcy.
Yeah, I can imagine you just wanted to wrap him up in a bubble and just keep him close and keep him safe.
Yes.
What future treatments have been discussed in the case of the progression of his illness?
At times we talk about maybe having to add rituximab, which is an infusion. It's like a immunotherapy, chemotherapy. He's been on the tacrolimus since he was 5. On the one hand, it's wonderful because it is kind of keeping him in remission and protecting his kidneys in that way. But being on it long term can also be nephrotoxic, so it can harm his kidneys. So it works really well for him, but we don't want to keep him on it for long periods.
Right.
So there's kind of discussion about would we need to. We keep trying to wean him from it. Every time we wean him, he relapses. So we kind of go back and forth. So adding this rituximab is one thing that they talk about. Our foundation is in the past few years, they've done more clinical trials with some other medications that we're hoping might be a little bit helpful. It's like a waiting game. We just kind of keep hoping that we can hold off long enough for some of these other treatments maybe to become available and just kind of preserve his kidney function for as long as possible.
Now that he's in high school and he's going to school every day, have there been any adjustments in his education or is he just trying to be a normal teenager?
He's definitely trying to be a normal teenager. He has a 504 plan that we put in place from the beginning because he was just starting this journey when he entered kindergarten. So the 504 plan allows for things like he can always go to the bathroom, he can always have water on hand. We put in his plan he can always wear a hat because with the drugs that he takes, there's an increased risk of skin cancer. So we always have to make sure he's protected. So certain things like that that he has, the ability to has a longer period of time to make up work. But he has his 504 in place. But it is really, we leave it now up to his discretion whether he wants to make his teachers aware that he needs more time or he's been absent or he needs these accommodations or not. If he, thankfully he has not been sick for a long period of time, and I'm like knocking on wood as I say this. If that were to happen, we would probably talk a little bit more about some of these accommodations. But otherwise, aside from missing school for labs and doctor's appointments and things like that, we just try to let him have a sense of normalcy.
I think that's great and seems really smart and intuitive. Is Zach participating in any activities at school? So besides just his classwork, is he doing any activities or sports or anything like that?
He used to be very into Taekwondo, and he actually got his black belt, which
Wow,
we were really thrilled with.
that's amazing.
But now he's really excited about audio visual production and film and things like that. So in high school, that's what was nice is there wasn't as much in middle school. So we keep trying to say, oh, it's okay, you were home. But high school, there's a lot more to do. So he's really excited about that. And he's spending a lot of time with that and passionate about it. And we're grateful he found something to be passionate about.
So have you turned over some of his responsibilities to him, like taking his medications? or do you still guide him with that? How is that working now that he's in high school?
It's a constantly evolving situation as I try to let go of the reins a little bit and put more onto him. We keep saying, I'm like, okay, you're a sophomore. I don't have to fully let go for a couple of years. He knows his medications, and if he needed to put them, in his little pill box that we do, because there's so many, he takes 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like 12 pills a day, right? So, like, to keep track of the AM and the PM. So, I kind of still take that on for him. If he's going to be out late at night, he takes his pills, he takes it on his own. I still remind him in the morning because it's hard as a teenager to wake up to, to take that. It's hard, as you know, with like the 12 hours and the time frame, and you really have to be good about taking it. I have a plan that I will start putting it more on him within the next year, like junior year, that he's taking on more of it. He is pretty responsible. He does know what he needs to do. He's actually going to go away for a couple of days with school in a month or two. And this is going to be the first time that he is going to be fully responsible. So this is like the little, little test
A little
run of like,
trial run.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, we're not going to be there. You're going to be away. You are now going to be responsible for everything. So set your timers and do what you need to do and make sure that you're on top of it. He will like test his, because he also has to test his urine, frequently. So he's taken more charge of that, doing it on his own, letting me know if there's an issue or not. It's a tough, letting go process.
Well, it sounds like you've set a great example for him, and hopefully he'll be able to step into that responsibility. And especially as he gets closer to maybe going away to college and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I do have some friends who dealt with kidney disease as children and teenagers, and the teenage years proved to be a bit of a struggle for them as they express.
I'm grateful. I'm very biased, but he's a really great kid and he's very responsible and he really does take his health seriously.
That's awesome.
So he tries as hard as it is to keep to the diet, to keep hydrated. He's had to control sodium and all of these things. He knows what he can do for so long. And he really does do a good job of taking responsibility for that.
That's awesome because there's so much to keep up with. So it's great to hear that he's really participating in that. And so you are a licensed clinical social worker. What do you do for support in this situation? Because as a parent, it's a lot of stress on you and a lot to deal with. And I can imagine it's very difficult and lonely at times. So what do you do for
Yeah.
support?
I take my own advice as I'm a therapist and I go to therapy weekly. I do try to reach out to family and friends who have been on this journey with me to try to get support. There's been amazing foundations also that have been a wonderful source of support. I'm blessed with even doctors. His doctors have been amazing and supportive when I'm worried or struggling. They're very grounding for me as well. And I really do try to get some breaks to try to take care of myself because I do feel like you can't pour from an empty cup. And I do notice when I'm not doing okay, then that really, it takes over everybody. So I've really learned that I really have to figure out how to make sure I'm okay and prioritize that so I can be the best person I can be for him and everybody else in the family.
Are there any support groups for parents who are dealing with children with kidney disease that you found?
Actually, I started co leading one with another amazing mom and a social worker who's also amazing from NephCure, which is our foundation specifically for these rare diseases. So, nephrotic syndrome, FSGS, minimal change. So, about a year ago, started an online parent support group. So, I co facilitate it with this other mom and the social worker. And parents come on from all over the state, even Canada, and we meet once a month. And it's a place we have topics that we discuss where we talk about, just things like how do you take care of yourself? How do you, navigate everything that's going on with your child, the different medications as parents are worried if they have to try a second line medication about side effects. If you look them up, they're very scary. So to be able to talk to other parents and say, oh, my kid's been on it for 10 years and it's been okay. So that's something that we've recently put together that's been wonderful.
I'm so impressed that you guys started that. And I know there are so many parents who are benefiting from having that group and being able to be in community with others who are experiencing the same thing. Thank you so much for doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I wish that I had had that when I was first navigating this, because it is so rare. You don't know anybody, and you need people that understand when you're talking about these things. It's like you need a whole, degree to understand all the lingo and everything you're talking about. So to just be able to speak freely and have people who get it, not feel so alone, it really makes a big
Because
difference.
sometimes you don't even know what you don't know. Sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask in the beginning, in the early stages of it.
Yeah.
So to have a community like that where sometimes the next person is asking a question that you're like, oh, wow, yeah, I needed to know that.
I think that's a really good point, is that the one thing I've learned is we have to be so informed and we have to be our own advocates so often. So the more that you know and the more information you have, the more you can kind of advocate and guide the treatment in the way that feels good to you.
That is wonderful. So besides starting this group for caregivers, have you done any other advocacy in the kidney community?
We were very lucky that we got to go back in 2018 to Washington, D.C. So we went with our foundation, NephCure. We were in from California. We were with another family from Illinois. And we got to meet with some of our representatives in the House and in the Senate and advocate for funding and for research and bills and all of that, which was an amazing experience. And we actually took it back home, where one of the representatives wasn't in the office at that time. So we saw him back when he was over here. We met with him in Long Beach with another family. So it was wonderful. It gave my son the opportunity to tell his story, to let people know what he would like. Everybody was wonderful and respectful. So that was an amazing, amazing opportunity. And we also, not as much advocacy, but we do have like a walk every year, which is a great event where we fundraise and we, kind of all get together and we hear, it's like a lunch and learn. So doctors come and they talk to us about, nephrotic syndrome and all of the research and what's coming up, and we can ask questions. So that's been a wonderful thing as well.
Going to DC is wonderful because the legislators really need to hear the stories directly from the people who are impacted. That is so important in getting legislation passed. So thank you for doing that.
Interestingly, my son was in a relapse when we went, so they got to see him in full, kind of full form as it was happening. So we were describing exactly what we were going through.
So, what advice would you give to other parents who are on a similar journey who may not have the option to have a group like yours to attend?
I would say whatever support you can get, even if it isn't, like a group like that. There's so many, just foundations like your foundation, just so many people helping within the kidney community. And there's so many similarities, even if it's not, like a rare disease like my son has. Everything that he's going through is the same thing that someone who's suffering from a different kidney disease is going through, or transplant. It's the same medications, it's the same treatment. So to just reach out and get that support wherever you can, from friends, for family, and really try to take care. And I have a little saying that I try to ground into, of let your faith be bigger than your fear. Just try to remember that hopefully things will be okay. Just try to have faith that it'll be okay, and just try to ride those waves as much as you can, because hopefully it'll smooth out soon.
I agree with that. And that seems like very sound advice that people can really adhere to and take and use as their own. Well, I just want to thank you for taking this time to talk with us and to share your story, to tell us a little bit about Zach and his journey.
I appreciate so much being here. I always feel better when I do feel like I can talk with others that have been on a similar journey, or if I can help in some way, because I know how hard it is. And so trying to put this experience into something purposeful or meaningful helps me. So thank you so much for having me and allowing me to be here. I really appreciate it.
Dealing with kidney disease is difficult, especially when the patient is a child. At NKFI, we have summer camp for kids with kidney disease. family programs, networking, and volunteer opportunities. To find out more information, go to nkfi.org. I'm Monica Fox, and this is The Journey Continues. Prevention's a key part of our mission at the Kidney Foundation. That's why at the end of each episode, Dr. Melissa Prest offers a health tip.
Here's today's health tip about exercise and physical activity. Everyone can benefit from moving their bodies daily. 30 to 60 minutes a day of some form of activity is recommended for its health benefits. Exercise has been shown to help with weight management and combat health conditions and diseases like heart disease, high blood pressure, strokes, diabetes, arthritis, depression, and anxiety. Exercise can increase your energy level, promote better sleep, and can actually be fun. Your exercise routine should include a variety of movement that gets your heart rate up and encourages you to use your muscles. Flexibility is also important so that you can move your joints through a full range of motion. Walking, jogging, jumping rope, climbing stairs, hiking, riding a bike, swimming, and rowing are exercises that get your heart pumping. Lifting weights or using exercise bands can be a great way to strengthen your muscles. And yoga or Tai Chi movements are great at increasing your flexibility. Whenever starting an exercise program, talk with your healthcare provider to discuss which types of exercises are most appropriate for you. Start slow and gradually increase your time and intensity. While 30 to 60 minutes a day is the recommendation, start where you can. Maybe it's 10 minutes a day, and continue to work until you get to the goal of 30 to 60 minutes. Always pay attention and listen to your body. If you feel dizzy, faint, or ill, stop exercising and follow up with your provider. With today's health tip, I'm Melissa Prest, a registered dietitian nutritionist and the foundation dietitian for the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois.